Welcome to Wealth Coffee Chats, folks, for your daily live updates. Get the most out of today's episode by participating in the chat. Make sure you ask some questions, be part of the conversation, have a bit of fun, grab a coffee or a tea, take some notes, and get ready to start your day, folks. Quick few housekeeping rules, though. No spamming, no advertising or self-promotion in the chat. That's not on. Be kind and respectful to everyone when participating. And most of all, have a good time. Real estate investing can be your biggest asset. It also can be your most expensive asset when it comes to getting it right or getting it wrong, folks. It can be time-consuming, stressful, and that's why here at Positive, we have what's called a 6-star team, a full-service team that provides integrated wealth and property investing solutions and services simply designed to help you progress towards your goal of passive income through your property portfolio, folks. Make sure you check out our other podcasts on the Positive Mentor Network. Not only is there Wealth Coffee Chats, there's the Urban Property Investor. Drops every Wednesday with straight talking investing strategies and lessons with Sam Saggers. Property Investor Tales. This is where our clients, you guys, share real life stories from property investing, hosted by some of our advisors and strategists. And that's done every fortnight, dropping every Monday. Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, folks, that debriefs the week that was in the world of finance and property, hosted by yours truly, Jason Witten and Andy Fenton on Fridays. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat. Marvellous Monday. Hope you're well, folks, wherever you are. If you think it's Get Rich Quick, you're in the wrong place. This is the wrong podcast. This is the wrong life for you. Welcome to another Wealth Coffee Chat. Hope you're all awesome and well. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wealth Coffee Chats. Tuesday, the 27th of August. Good to see you here. Kevin, good to see you back for the morning chats, which is the evening for you, Florida. Great to have you back, mate. Good to see you, Jeff. Rosie, thanks for joining us this morning. Hope you're all well, folks, wherever you are in this wonderful world. While things are getting going, we do the old intros as we do. Most of you know this, though, but Jason Witten's my name. If you didn't already know, now you do. And, each morning we're getting together and have a bit of a wealth coffee chat. Been doing this for a little while now. Probably since COVID, actually. Maybe just a bit before COVID. I can't remember exactly when it started. Might go back and have a look at the dates, but 3 or 4 years been doing the Wealth Coffee Chats, trying to keep the wheels on your momentum, your motion towards creating your portfolio, folks. And been a property investor myself well over 20 years, helping people across Australia and New Zealand build their property portfolios. So welcome along to the morning chit chat, the coffee chat, about what's real and what's not in the world of property investing. And making sure we go the distance, folks. It takes a little bit of effort, takes a bit of time to create and build your property portfolio. We connect each day and have a conversation about what that might mean. So welcome along. Great to have you here. If you're new, love to hear from you in the chat. Give us a shout out, say hello. Let us know where you're dialing in from. You might be one of our newer clients. You might found us accidentally. Who knows what happens? But in the world of the World Wide Web and Facebook and socials, welcome along wherever you're from. Well, let's crack into it today, folks. I thought we might chat about a few things. The idea that there's a fair few acronyms and new terms and new terms and terminologies that we need to understand as property investors, and understanding cash flow. The conversation around cash flow is a pretty important one, I think. What does it mean? There's the idea of kind of understanding what our cash flow is, understanding what happens when we talk to the accountant, understanding what happens when we report to the ATO. Yes, sir. 3 bags full, sir. Here's my tax cert. Those sorts of things. So I thought we might talk about that this morning, because often there's a few dimensions to the conversation of cash flow that we need to sort of get our heads around. And I want to sort of, maybe share a little bit of insight to that one today. So there's three different versions of the world, really, at the end of the day, when it comes to cash flow and reporting on how our properties are doing. Put them in the chat for me, folks. How do you talk about the cash flow of your property? What is the terminology that you've heard? Chuck a few in the chat. I wonder if there's some different versions of the world that are going around. But when it comes to cash flow of your property, what do you see? What are the words that you use or you and your team use when you're talking about it? There's three versions of the world here that I'm going to sort of talk about today, right? And so negative cash flow and negative geared. So negative cash flow and negative gearing, all right? So the idea, positive and negative, yeah, look, that's the very basics of it all for sure. And at the higher level, you go, all right, well, is it positive or negative? However, are those sort of things. You go, all right, well, at this end of town, it's positive cash flow, and still you would say over here, positive geared. Let's call it geared because you're using certain things. And in here, it might be negative cash flow. So negative cash flow, but you might be able to, it might be positively geared because the cash flow comes to you after tax. All right. So this is some conversations that we'll sort of have a bit of a yarn about today. I'm going to talk about cash flow as we roll along. Now the understanding here when it comes to a property you own, let's just use this as an example. You might have a property, the rent that comes in, let's call it $30,000 a year. You might have the expenses, which includes your interest, might be $50,000 a year. Okay, so at the moment it's negative $20,000, right? You might get an offset of $10,000 in for tax deductions and other bits and pieces if you're able to offset it against your cash flow. And at the end of the day, after tax, so before tax, negative cash flow, and after tax, which is gearing. So this is after tax and this is before tax. Okay. The cash flow is negative before tax. So the rent does not cover any of the costs, which includes the rates, insurance, and that sort of stuff. And then when you factor in your tax deductions and your offsets and whatever it might be, even with some tax back, it's still negative cash flow. So this one, negative, if possible, to be avoided. If possible, right? Now, at the moment, a lot of good quality properties are in this zone here, okay, which is, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, in this zone here, which is bridging here, and we'll talk about buffers and how we use buffers, cycling this stuff, right? So it's negative cash flow before tax, it's negative cash flow after tax, and you have to top it up out of your extra income. So, not many of us can sustain that for a long time. How do we manage that if we're choosing those types of properties? Because sometimes those types of properties have some capital growth potential that we want to own. We'll talk about that in a minute. And this one here, which is kind of the Goldilocks zone. So over here, actually, we'll go the other end, right? Positive cash flow. So, here's a house, here's a property. The rent comes in, it's $30K. The expenses are $20K, okay, which is fabulous. And then you might, what happens in this circumstance, the tax deductions, right? The tax deductions, you've got positive cash flow here. So it means it adds to your tax. So you have to pay some extra tax rather than getting tax back.
not the end of the world, by the way. So you might have to pay some tax and you'll get, that might be positive cash flow 7K. Okay, so positive cash flow 7K. Now, the challenge is, folks, perfect, Luke, I love it. The challenge is down here. Often this type of property is in places and spaces that, aren't necessarily the right type of property we want to grow in our portfolio to begin with, where we purchase them straight like this. Often most properties will turn into properties like this, right? So let's have a look in the middle here, which is kind of the Goldilocks zone, where often we've got a property that might be, negative cash flow. You've got your 30K coming in. You might have expenses of 30K. So it's kind of, it doesn't make any money, like from a cash flow point of view. We haven't accounted for capital growth here. This is just cash flow. 30 in, 30 out, and then you get some tax back, and it's positive cash flow after tax. So you get 5K back, okay? So what happens is it was negative before tax, and then after tax it was positive, 5K, okay? Now, that's a cash flow scenario. So that's cash flow, so money going back in your pocket. You can claim that back weekly, fortnightly, monthly when it comes to our portfolio. Depends on how you're structured tax-wise. Luke's saying he's done his tax returns and he's just got a benefit at the end of the year, which is great. 25K replenishing the buffer. All right, so which is fantastic, which leads me to the next conversation. So depending on where you are with your property and your portfolio, you might mix and match sometimes. We used to do a conversation where we go, right, a capital growth property often has some lower cash flow. A lesser capital growth property sometimes have some higher cash flow, and we can, we can connect them together in that sort of as we go. Yeah, you're right. You're right, Tim. Never seem to get enough of the tax back. You're dead right. Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, this is an interesting thing, because depending on, where you choose to store your wealth and store your cash and your money, property is a very efficient place for storing, a very efficient and safe place for storing your cash and your wealth and your money. You get some rental income, you get some capital appreciation that's over and above inflation, and usually you get some offsets and some cash tax deductions on that investment too, which makes it efficient, which is good, right? So we've got our cash flow here, understanding negative cash flow, neutral or positive after tax, and positive cash flow. Now, negative gearing, folks, negative gearing is just the application of using any of the losses that are applicable, and all three of these situations, negative gearing, to offset and or get tax back, depending on how you want to sort of language it, against your personal income as an individual. That's negative gearing. It's applicable to everyone, whether you're a property investor, whether you're investing in shares, whether you're investing in anything. So it's an interesting one. There's always this talk about negative gearing makes property unaffordable for people and all that sort of stuff, but I think is complete, absolute rubbish. If you took negative gearing away, the rents would go through the roof. Matter of fact, I would prefer there to be no negative gearing. This would be my preference, because then it'd be pretty simple. Your properties would be positive cash flow. You'd charge the rent would be more than the expenses, and then there wouldn't be any confusion. So, if I could wave a magic wand and, not have a disaster with the changeover, that's how I would do it. But, governments, that's the way it is. So anyway, they need to make things confusing. Cash flow scenario, how do we manage this as we go forward as investors? How do we manage this sort of stuff? Over time, you guys have seen this before. But, over time, we want, our rental incomes to go up, which is fantastic. Our capital value, we're pretty happy for our capital values to go up as well. And, over time, we want our debt, right? Usually our debt starts out a bit more than our net worth. we want our debt to go down. We know this. I mean, we've seen these lines before, right? And over here, in some point in the future, between 0 and sort of 20 years, is where where net wealth, net money, net cash flow, is going to be, right? The challenge we all face in this scenario is that our cash flow, so this is an interesting one, right? Your rents are fairly stable. Usually over time, your capital growth in your progression of value, property values is fairly stable in over time. And your debt reduction, your mortgage, goes down slowly over time. But what happens when it comes to the cost of our debt? When we have debt, the interest rates, let's just use this, the interest rate might be low, right? So it's down and then it's up and then it's like this and then it's down and then it's up and then it's down. It's like so that the interest rate is all over the place, right? So how do we manage that volatility? Because everything else is fairly stable, right? So how do you manage that volatility when it comes to interest rates? And folks, Luke gave you the answer before. It's understanding how to run our buffers, all right? Our buffers in our investments, okay? What is a buffer? Well, a buffer is an amount of money that you put in your account that is there to pay for the value or the ebbs and flows of cash flow issues on your property, right? Now, for me, 100%, the property should be able to pay for itself, folks, over time, right? So what do I mean by that? Let's just do a little thing here, all right? Let's say you start out and you buy a property, let's call it 700K, and you might put some cash or some equity in. Let's just say you put 100K in here, and you've got a $600,000 mortgage. All right. Okay. So the loan to value ratio here. Now you may need to put into this property a buffer, a liquid buffer. Now. It doesn't mean it sits in this property here. By the way, folks, it could be sitting in your offset account in your personal place of residence. Just understand that. But what buffer, which is like a backup amount of money, cash, liquid capital that you've got that you can have sitting against this property or for this property to weather the storm. All right, weather the challenges. Okay, so. You can work out those things. I always like between $5,000 and $10,000 per property in my buffer. Okay, so as a minimum. So if I put 10K in there, now that 10K is for that property. Okay, that property. So how does that work? Well, let's just quickly have a look at a little scenario here. That I was playing around with before, and I'm just gonna change this, right? So let's go 6.5%. I've pre-done all the numbers and bits and pieces here. So this property might be like $12,000 negative cash flow for the year, pre-tax, before tax. Now, if you claim your tax back as you go, or you wait till the end of the year, like some people do, depends on how you get the cash flow back. Luke claimed it back at the back of the end of the year. Some might claim it as they go. So here you say, okay, well, it's negative cash flow pre-tax. Remember our pre-tax conversation back here. Okay, so before tax, it's negative. And then after tax, it's positive. So we claim our tax back. We get some deductions here. We get a tax refund. Okay. It's still negative. It's still negative $2,000. Okay. So that's 6.5% interest rate. So now we've got our buffer over here, which is 10. Let's call it 2.5. So next year, our buffer now is $7,500. Okay. So let's just say that's our buffer, 7.5. How many years can we maintain or cover that amount, folks? Well, it's 4 years if it stays all linear. But does it always stay linear, folks? Well, the answer is no. Okay. So let's say the rent goes up. Let's say the rent goes up $100, which it just did. So let's go now have a look at our cash flow. Oh, well, hang on. There we go. Our cash flow is now positive 1,000. So the next year, okay, in our buffer, now it's 8,500, and then, let's say the interest rates go down the following year. Okay. Let's say the interest rate goes down to 1%, goes down to 5.5. Okay. What happens? Okay. Let's have another little look. Oh, our after-tax cash flow is now 5,000. So our buffer now is, I don't know, what's that? $12,000, $13,000. So hopefully you're following along at home and sort of understanding the concept. Now, if we did this prior to, now let's say you purchased this property prior, let's say in 2020, when interest rates were really low and you got a 3.5% interest rate for 5 years, have a look at the after-tax cash flow on that property there, $14,000. So let's just imagine that your $10,000 was in 2020, you bought a property, and then for 3 years, 2020, 21, 22, and 23, 4 years, it was $15,000. What would be your buffer? I got some random here. Yeah, blocking. Hang on. Anyone want to buy Bitcoin from a random on our live? No. So if you had 4 years of your buffer building, let's say in this way, $14,000, folks, is that going to be pretty good? So you got 15, so that's 60K, which is four years. So anyway, what's the point of the conversation this morning about our buffers and our cash flow? Well, understand that, there's negative cash flow pre and post tax. There's positively geared, so it's negative before tax and positive after tax. And there's positive cash flow, which is positive pre-tax and positive after tax. Those three are the different versions of the world. And how do you manage this stuff? Well, you use your buffers. And folks, if you have any tax back, just like Luke did, it goes in your buffers, your tax deductions and capital growth in your property, because you can reset those loans and replenish your buffers. Not only you get your tax deductions back, but you replenish your buffer with capital growth, folks, is to pay for the properties, right? You should be able to structure yourself effectively within the first 3 to 7 years of that property's the property's ownership, that the property will always be paying for itself. It pays its own way. Pays its own way from the rents, pays its own way from the tax deductions it gets back from your taxes. It goes back into your properties, not back into your pocket. And it pays its own way from its equity capital growth, using some of that growth to replenish buffers to continue to pay for that property. Okay. Hopefully that made sense. Does that make sense? Anyway. All right, folks. Well, that's it from me this morning. Hey, good morning, Rodney. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Cole, we haven't seen you for a while. Hope you're well, Cole. Good to see you back in the Wealth Coffee Chats. Well, that's it from me, folks, today. Thanks for joining. As always, remember, this thing's a marathon, not a sprint. It takes time to build this portfolio, folks. Remember, buy well, don't sell, unless it's strategically clever for you to do so. There we go. We've added it in, but it doesn't sound as good, I don't think. Anyway, that's it. I'm just rambling now. All right, folks, take care. Bye for now. See you tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow, the team will be on it'll be the property management team. So join them tomorrow for Wealth Coffee Chats. Bye-bye, folks. Cheers.
Episode of Wealth Coffee Chat, folks. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you never miss a thing when we go live. Improve your portfolio and investing game, folks, with Wealth Coffee Chats live every morning at 8:10 each weekday. Make sure you join us. Previous episodes are also available wherever you get your podcasts, folks, as well as our other podcasts from the 6-Star team here at positivementor.com.